Hey everybody, Michael Anderson with eTail Solutions again. I wanted to talk today about the top 3 ways to avoid regional stockouts and increase customer satisfaction. So to kick this off, let's dig into a report that I saw recently. It's called the Convey Last Mile Report. Now in this report, they talk about the fact that 80% of consumers, so you and I, are less likely to repurchase from a seller if we have a poor delivery experience. Now, I think that most of us would probably agree we fall into that classification. So that's fairly normal and expected. But what was interesting was the next statistic that I saw, which said that on average, 30% of e-commerce deliveries are late. 30%. That's pretty substantial. Now, there's a lot of different reasons as to why that could occur. Today, we're going to really focus in on the specific issue of how do you avoid that by making sure that the right inventory is in the right location when you need it. So we're going to talk about inventory replenishment. So the first thing that I want to dig into, the first key concept here is I want to just encourage everybody to pause their traditional replenishment practices and make sure that you're not just blindly replenishing inventory via old school tactics. And what do I mean by that? Well, essentially, oftentimes people will replenish inventory from a particular location when inventory levels hit a restocking point. And then that's sort of their trigger to go ahead and order more inventory. Well, there's a fundamental flaw with approaching replenishment in that particular way. And it comes down to one key concept / assumption. That assumption is effectively that when you replenish just based on hitting a restocking point, you're making an assumption that the inventory that shipped from that location actually should have shipped from that location. So what do I mean? Well, when you look at, let's take an example. Let's say a customer orders something online. Could be Amazon, your website, Walmart, doesn't really matter. They order from Florida and you've got an inventory location in Atlanta and you've got an inventory location in Salt Lake City. Well, if you didn't have inventory in Atlanta, you're going to make up for that by shipping the product from Salt Lake City. That has a whole bunch of other problems with it. But as we look at just the inventory issue, when it comes time to replenish inventory, you're going to hit that restocking point, you're going to replenish inventory, but you're assuming that the demand that came from that particular location should have. In other words, Salt Lake City in that case was simply making up for the fact that it should have come from Atlanta. So the actual demand should have been recorded as being Atlanta demand, if that makes sense. So I get that there's a lot of data that has to come together to do that. And one of those is our second key concept here, which is making sure that you understand the real velocity for each and every SKU by location per day. Now, this is a lot more than just looking at sales over a period of time and dividing by the number of days. That is a very, very common way to go about it, and it actually can end up causing you to make some significant mistakes, especially when we're talking about how you publish inventory online. Now, when you're looking at that velocity per day, the right way to look at this is what inventory did I move on these days when inventory was both available but also being published. Right? There are different software solutions out there where you can publish a percentage of your inventory, or maybe when you get below a certain level, you don't publish to certain channels. Well, you have to look at what inventory did I sell when the world actually knew that I had it. And that's a really important concept. So simple example, you sell 30 units over 30 days. That would say the average is 1 per day. But if you only had inventory published or available for 15 of those days, that's actually a velocity of 2 per day. Right? Depending on whether you're taking that into consideration or not could actually dramatically affect when you have stockouts and how frequently you have stockouts. So looking at the velocity per day when inventory was available is key concept number 2. The third concept that I want to talk about here has to do with understanding seasonality. Now, seasonality can take a lot of different forms. It could be just simply that you have a product type where in Q4, people go online, they buy for the holidays, and so you experience sort of your typical Q4 bump in the e-commerce world. That's one way that we see seasonality. Another is you might have products that are seasonal. So you sell less space heaters, for example, in the summertime than you do in the wintertime. Also, you're going to sell, there's a regional aspect to space heaters for sure. I'm from Minnesota, we know this. There's another concept here around, let's say you sell, you're in the fashion industry, and so you have different styles that you're going to launch, and you really don't have a past history because it's a new style, but you can look at different patterns from previous style launches and you can design your replenishment based on that. Well, so that's, you call it seasonality, we call it demand profiles, but effectively think of it as sort of a multiplier that you can apply to the amount of inventory that you're ordering for a period of time. So if you're ordering for 90 days in advance, what is the actual seasonal multiplier for that particular season? So that's concept number 3. And that's very important. So to summarize again, we've looked at 3 different key concepts. The first is don't replenish using old school tactics. Make sure that you actually understand that you're replenishing based upon what should have shipped from a location, not just what did. The second one has to do with understanding velocity per day at the units per day level when inventory was available and when it was published for sale. The third key concept has to do with seasonality and making sure that you understand the seasonality of the products that you're replenishing. Now the fourth, sort of, let's call this a bonus item that I'll throw in, but it probably actually deserves its own full post, has to do with making the decision of how much inventory do I replenish. And I'll leave you with this, and maybe I'll follow up, like I said, in a different post on this, but I want to really encourage you to dig into and understand how to replenish inventory using the ideal number of inventory turns per year. A lot of downstream benefits of that, lowering your carrying costs, increasing your gross margin return on an investment. A lot of really cool things that come as a result of that. So I'll tease you with just look into using inventory turns as your primary method for understanding how much inventory to replenish in those locations. So I hope this was helpful. Clearly, there's a lot of data that has to come together in order to be able to do this. It takes a lot of time to do it manually. It can be tremendously helpful to have the right systems working for you to be able to provide you with this information and or even help you make the decisions themselves. So if you want to talk about any of these concepts, I want to encourage you to click the link in the comments and just book a one-on-one time with us. Very low pressure. We just love to solve problems. If we can help you, fantastic. If we're not a right fit for you or it's not something that we do, we might know somebody in the industry. We've been around for over 13 years doing this for a lot of high volume sellers. So give us a call or schedule a time to talk to us. We'd love to help you out. Until next time, thanks for your time.